Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission meeting for January 23rd, 2018. Before we begin the proceedings, is Reverend Tim Vanderhaar in the house this evening? If not, I will defer to Commissioner Willie German, if you would lead us in prayer.
Oh, no problem.
And prayer will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone that wishes to join us, please feel free. We'll have you lead out, Commissioner.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to pray for, we could just have to stand.
Okay, let us bow our heads. Father God, we come to you in the name of Jesus. We ask you to look down on this meeting, this community, everyone that's partaking into this meeting. We ask you to look over our nation as it goes into the turmoil and the problems that it faces. But we just want to do the right things. We ask that you touch the hearts of minds and of our commissioners, the staff, the firefighters, the police, the community, and protect us all. And lead us to do the right thing. Touch our heart and guide us to make good decisions. Allow us to be friendly to one another and respect one another. And in your name we pray, in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
May we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Gallren,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hood,
Here.
Commissioner Warren,
Here.
Commissioner German,
Here.
Commissioner Rinsma-Sibiga, absent, Commissioner Turnquist,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. Well, this evening, we're honored to have Renee Hessling, Power Produce Update. And why don't you take her away?
Thank you very much. So we have two power produce programs at the Muskegon Farmers Market, and I'll talk about them separately. But just as a reminder, we have a kids power produce program that serves kids ages 3 to 13. We're going into our 5th year of operation. It operates from June, the first weekend in June through September we did this past year. So only on Saturday mornings, the kids register for the program, and then each week when they check in, they get $2 worth of tokens to go spend on produce with the farmers. And then the farmers collect the tokens, turn them into the market office, and then we reimburse them for their tokens that they collect. We also have activities that support healthy lifestyle, whether it be cooking classes or composting or, anything around healthy. We've got yoga. Root Down comes and does a couple of yoga classes for kids during the summer. So each week we try to have 1 or 2 activities that the kids can participate in. And typically we have about 75 kids that stay and participate. In this past year, we had a total of over 660 kids register for the program. Of that, just to give some highlights, 265 of those kids showed up for more than 4 weeks of the program, which we figure, we kind of set a goal of if they can show up maybe once a month, it might change a habit. We had 96 kids that showed up more than 10 weeks of the program, and then 45 kids had 13 out of the 18 total weeks show up. So we reimbursed this past year $6,300 to the farmers, and then, as I mentioned, we had 75 to 100 kids participate each week in the activities. Our big supporters of this program, obviously we have to have some money to do it. Arconic has been our largest sponsor of this program since the very beginning. The Women's Division of the Chamber also is one of our major sponsors. They give us financial, funding, and they also, every week, 4 volunteers from the Women's Division show up to help us with the program. So, So, the kids come from all over the county, and we do get some from Ottawa County, and we get some from Oceana County. We continue to do outreach, though, to, kids from Muskegon Public Schools mainly, because that's our backyard. So some of the things that we've got planned, and we've tried some of these in the past, we've done stuffers in kids' food baskets, sack suppers, to let them know about the program. We have, MAISD helps us do outreach. They send out notifications to the principals and teachers every May for us. Last year, we tried to work with the Boys and Girls Club, and we were going to take them to a farm and then bring them down to the kitchen to do some culinary classes, and our transportation fell through, so we want to redo that one this year. We have done some activities with Community and Compass, their catch camp. They have a camp that's, I think, 6 weeks long. So they come to the market usually, and we support them by giving them tokens. One of the things that we did this year, too, with the USDA grant money that we had was we created some curriculum for the market manager, as well as, we can pass that on to teachers, because we do get a number of requests from teachers to bring, their class for a field trip. And, most of the time the teachers are on their own to come up with something to give the kids to do while they're there. So we've now got some curriculum that we can give a teacher that will, they'll be able to do it, or we can have a volunteer help them with that. So we're always looking for ideas on how to get more kids engaged. So I think you all have a report, our summary report from the year. You'll see on the back of it, the school districts, and this is just a sampling, it's not everyone, but our biggest number of kids come from Mona Shores District, Reese Puffer District, Oak Ridge and Orchard View have a fair number. We get a fair number of homeschool kids too, so any questions?
Any questions for Renee?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Hi and welcome. Did I hear you say 578 kids attended?
We had 660 kids register, 666 register for the program.
Okay.
We had 500 of them in the first 3 weeks.
Okay.
So.
And I'd like to commend you on your outreach, and I think it's very important that children learn, this agriculture skill for growing produce and learning about nutrition and stuff like that. And you mentioned that under the USAID grant, it was something that you gave to your manager, and they networked with the teachers of the schools? Yeah, we were able, some of that money we had earmarked for some curriculum development. Some teachers may come up with their own, but many times they call the office and they want to bring a school bus full of kids, and they want the market manager or market staff to, lead those kids through the market and do the activities with them. So we had some curriculum developed that we can either do that with them, or we can give it to a teacher and then they can take it and run with it. So it has instructions on how to use it. So hopefully we'll be able to engage with that. One of the things we'd like to do too is, because we don't let kids pre-register, it starts on the first weekend in June, and that's the first you can sign up. So we're going to do some outreach and try to get some field trips to the market in May and let them sign up that way. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Warren?
Sure.
I have told you so many times, I just thank you. We're so grateful for the work you and everybody else that's listed on here does for the Kids Power of Produce and the Seniors Power of Produce. It's a huge asset in our community, so I can't thank you enough. I've been trying to brainstorm, because I know you've been working diligently to try and improve numbers from Muskegon Public and Muskegon Heights, and I remember the bus trips and all that. I've been trying to brainstorm on that. Have you had much contact with the WIC offices or with those different programs?
Yes, we have, and also Head Start. So I know we get get posters made, and we get bookmarks for the kids, and we send those out to all the libraries, and then the Head Start usually takes a good amount of them and gets them out into that community.
Sure.
So,
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that you do.
thanks. And I do want to mention Senior Power Produce, because we have the program for 62 years and older. This was the second year we held that. Our big supporter for that program is the Fruitport Lions and the Shoreline branch of the Fruitport Lions. They manage the program. They've kicked in financial funding. The funding that we got to initially start that program came from the Healthy Muskegon money through the Muskegon, or the foundation, Community Foundation. So the first year we had 956 seniors sign up for that program, and we reimbursed farmers for $11,336. And then last year, we kept the registrations for the seniors that had registered the first year and just added to that. So additionally, we signed up 600 more seniors, and last year, we reimbursed for 13,152 tokens that were taken in. And the seniors get $4 worth of tokens instead of $2 like the kids do. So that was an average. The program ran 7 weeks, and that was an average of about 431 seniors checking in every Tuesday we run that program. So we're always looking for funding. We've got our feelers out now. I know the Fruitport Lions, there's been a grant submitted to them, and it all depends on money and on how many we can accommodate. So yeah, any questions on the senior program?
Commissioner Johnson?
Speaking of money, have you pursued, or is the likelihood of being able to tap into any of the proceeds from the senior millage that the county has?
We did. We were notified of that potential last fall, I guess, early in the fall. And because of the amount of reporting that you have to do, we didn't feel we could accommodate that. Like, you have to ask income levels and, a lot of personal information that we didn't feel like we should be asking. So we let that go by, but now we've been approached by more than one person about, well, you really need to seek out some of that funding. So we think there's a second round of that.
Okay. And you might have an opportunity to tap into one of the vendors that are receiving some of the money, perhaps being a supplementally service or
correct.
Subcontractor, perhaps, even? Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Commissioner Warren?
Just
you
like
had
the
another question?
other commissioners said, kudos. Excellent work on both programs, and I'm happy to see them grow and expand and continuously evolve to how to make them better.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the efforts of you and all the donors and volunteers and everyone else. It's just
Yeah, we couldn't do it without the volunteers.
Overall.
We actually, on Tuesdays for the Senior Power Produce, there's been kind of a section of the market created where there's services that are available for seniors, like the health department, and there's like an insurance company there that focuses on seniors, and McLaughlin Grows, who typically did not come to Tuesday Market, now comes to Tuesday Market. So some things like that are happening.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Warren?
I'm just wondering, do you know the way that you have listed for the kids program where a lot of the participants are coming from based on on school district? Do you collect the addresses for the seniors where we can see countywide where they're being pulled from more? Or?
No, right now we're only collecting zip codes.
Okay.
Which is really broad.
Right, exactly. Okay.
Commissioner German?
Yeah, just one other question. Now, are any of the children in your program connected with any of the neighborhood association or with the community gardens? Do they actually get any hands-on experience in actually gardening?
Well, the first 4 weeks of the program, we have had one of the farmers donate seeds, dirt, and containers. So for the first 4 weeks each year, we have actually had the kids plant things to take home. So like watermelon, green beans, a variety of fruits and vegetables that they can take home and then nurture. And we've had feedback from them in pictures of them growing in their garden at home or things like that. So yes, we do that.
Yeah, and by Michigan being the second largest agriculture producer in the nation. I think that's really great. The kids get that hands-on experience and learn about agriculture.
Yeah, one of our really ideal things we want to do is to get bus trips to farms too. So,
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? I just had one question. How do Kit Kats qualify within?
Kit Kats are really bad. I'd go for a Hershey bar instead. Did you all get a new brochure?
I have.
I have.
Well, I'm going to pass those down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Great job. Thank you very much. May we have the consent agenda, please?
Approval of minutes, City Clerk, summary request to approve minutes of the January 3rd, 2018 organizational meeting, January 8th, 2018 work session meeting, and the January 9th, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Staff recommendation, approval of the minutes. Curry Kitchen easement, City Manager, summary request. Curry Kitchen is requesting a 6-foot invisible easement from 1141 3rd Street to 1133 3rd Street so they may use the same liquor license for both establishments. Both locations shall be operated as a restaurant and remain open. If either location closes or does not operate 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., this agreement is terminated and the easement will no longer exist. Staff recommendation, approval. Special event liquor license, Farmers Market, City Clerk, summary request. The Muskegon Farmers Market will be hosting a Dining in the Dark event on Wednesday, February 14, 2018 at the Farmers Market, and we are requesting a liquor license including spirits. Proceeds will benefit the Farmers Market. Staff recommendation to approve the request.
Thank you, Commissioners. You've heard the consent agenda as presented. Are there any items you wish to have removed for further discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
B, please.
That was
B, as in boy.
B as in boy. Any others?
No.
Commissioner Rinzma-Sabinger.
Seeing no others, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented minus item B.
Support. It's been moved by Commissioner Rinzma-Sabinger, seconded by the Vice Mayor to accept the consent agenda as presented minus item B. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Rinzma-Sibiga.
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Mayor Gallren.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item B, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the easement for Curry Kitchen at co-locations of 1141 3rd Street and 1133 3rd Street.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Warren, to approve the 6-foot invisible easement from 1141 3rd Street to 1133 3rd Street. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. Do we have anyone representing Curry Kitchen here tonight by chance?
Do not.
That could provide an update? Is that Raj back there? Would you care to approach and speak on this matter?
Didn't see him.
Please? How you doing tonight? Doing well, thank you.
If we could just get your name and address, Raj, we appreciate that, just for the record.
Rajendra Grewal, 6683 Windflower Way, Muskegon, Michigan.
Thank you.
I was not sure that I was supposed to speak something, but we've been working on this thing for almost a year, going back and forth, but that will be a big help for the business. We've been struggling really hard without the license on both sides, and then more plan was to have more stuff on the 3rd Street that can help all the other vendors too. So that will be helping bring more traffic to the 3rd Street and the more community and more stuff happening in the neighborhood.
Absolutely. So I see the agreement will terminate and the easement will cease to exist if either location closes or does not operate 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. So do you have plans to open imminently in the prior Curry Kitchen location, the 1141 3rd Street, or does this easement not go into effect until both are up and running?
So after this approval, we have to go to the state and then finalize with them, and then we go from there.
Okay.
As soon as they approve it, then we can open it,
Okay. Excellent. Well, I'm excited. I know you've been struggling with this liquor license issue, and when we were informed by the city clerk a few months ago that the state had denied the previous one in terms of getting it at both locations or transferring it to Curry Kitchen, I'd mentioned to her, I was like, is there anything we can do to help you on this? Because I really would like Curry Kitchen to be successful in its new location. I'd like for you to be successful in establishing a new restaurant in the prior location. You've been a integral part of the revitalization of Midtown, 3rd Street. And so I wanted to make sure that we were supporting you in your efforts. And so I see this as a nice stopgap measure so that at least we can provide alcoholic beverages at both locations as you sort out the separate licensing issues. But I'm pleased to see this before us and happy to support it and wish you the best of success in your endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Good luck, Rod.
Thank you. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Ritza-Pacifica?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Galvin?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. New business, please.
Concurrence with the Housing Board of Appeals notice in order to demolish public safety. 330 Catawba Avenue, garage only, 910 Turner Avenue, 1838 Gyrock Street, 1934 Hudson Street, 2247 Valley Street. 13 residential structures recently transferred from the Muskegon County Land Bank to Muskegon County Treasurer as tax foreclosed properties to the City of Muskegon. Summary of request. This is to request that the City Commission concur with the findings of the Housing Board of Appeals that the structures are unsafe, substandard, a public nuisance, and that they be demolished within 30 days or infraction tickets may be issued. It is further requested that administration be directed to obtain bids for the demolition of the structures and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized and directed to execute contracts for demolition with the lowest responsible bidder, or staff may issue infraction tickets to the owner, agent, or responsible party if they do not demolish the structure. Staff recommendation to concur with the Housing Board of Appeals decision to demolish.
Thank you. Is there anyone here on the property at 330 Catawba Avenue, garage only? No? Mike, you're here on 910 Turner, right? Yes, I am. Okay. Is there anyone here at 1838 Gyrock Street? 1934 Hudson Street? That was you.
Yes.
247 Valley Street? And we are the holders of the 13 residential structures. Could I get a motion then on 330 Catawba, 1838 Gyrock, 2247 Valley, and the 13 residential structures transferred from the land bank?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Warren, supported by Commissioner Ritza-Pacifica, to concur with the Housing Board of Appeals notice in order to demolish 330 Catawba Avenue, garage only, 1838 Gyrock Street, 2247 Valley Street, and 13 residential structures recently transferred from the Muskegon County Land Bank. Any discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
A question with regard to the 13 residential structures that were transferred and that we'll be paying to demolish out of our our blight fight money that we got from the state, MISTA. Has our Community Neighborhood Services Department or Anita reviewed any of these houses that they deem as being possible rehab opportunities as part of our ongoing rehab housing projects?
I'll let Mike speak to it, but I believe she has.
They always take a look at the properties. I can't speak on these particular, but I know that they're always looking and working with Safebolt on that, so.
Okay. So, I mean, most of them look beyond repair.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine really she'd want to,
They're usually
or we
very
would want
eager to
to.
acquire the ones that are salvageable.
Yeah. There was just one in question that I saw that seemed to be in fair shape. That was 908 Ireland. Kind of small. I didn't see a driveway. Maybe it's difficult to rehab and resell. Not much resale value, but I'd like to be in fair shape. And there's a very nice tree in front of it. I guess as part of the memo, it indicates that tree's coming down.
Yeah.
It's got an excellent canopy on it. I realize that the roots are starting to pull up the sidewalk and the neighbor's driveway. It's a shame that that's going to have to go as part of this demolition because it is a very nice canopy. And as you know, and trees add value to neighborhoods in more than one way. So We've exhausted our options of how we might be able to save that tree as part of the demolition.
I don't know if they have,
We can take a look at it.
but, we can certainly replace it if there's no other options. We get tree grants every year, so.
Okay. And it seems like a relatively smaller lot. What's the expectation for after we demo? Is it an area that's zoned now where we got the shorter width that can be rebuilt, or is it expected that we're going to parcel it out to the neighbors?
This is, which one were you referring to
This
again?
is
907 Ireland.
907 Ireland Avenue.
Yeah, I don't believe that one was rezoned, so I'm not sure what the size
So it
of
might
the
be
lot is.
unbuildable?
It might be buildable. If not, then we'd ask the neighbors if they'd like any of it.
Okay. Gotcha. And then how much money do we have left over after we use the grant money for this? How much money do we have left in the grant to use?
There's about a $150,000 grant, I believe, right off the top of my head. It's hard to recall, but yeah, I think it's about $150,000 to $200,000 we received.
Okay. I mean, I can't argue with the tearing down these houses. They're in very, very poor shape and are detracting from our neighborhoods. The only one that stood out was 907 Ireland as possibly salvageable, and particularly that tree canopy. So, yep. Well, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions, commissioners? Roll call, please.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Pacifica?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallron?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. For the individuals that are here on the particular properties, first we'll ask for a motion to concur so that we can begin a discussion. Staff will present a report then on 910 Turner Avenue and then on the 1934 Hudson Street. As we touch on each one of those properties, then after the staff report, then I would invite the interested parties up to give comment at that time. As quite often the case, the commission does typically concur with the board individuals that are interested in the have interest in the property or are interested in the property have recourse to apply for a writ of superintendent control at the circuit court. Easier to do if you actually own the property, not so easy to do if you don't. You have to be the interested party. So that could be the bugaboo in some of these issues. So, but anyway, could I get a motion on 910 Turner Avenue?
So move.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Muskegon, moved by Commissioner Johnson, to concur with the Housing Board of Appeals notice and order to demolish 910 Turner Avenue. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. 910 Turner Avenue. This one's a little unique because of the fact the house is a dangerous building, but it's been a source of complaints for many years. Taxes have been delinquent in 2015, 16, and the summer of 2017. The estimated cost to repair this home is about $45,000, while the SEV, that's half the value of the house, is about $12,000. Here's an idea. We've had 21 fire calls that responded there in 2017, 31 police responses there in 2017. There's been 8 enforcement actions there, the trash since 2014. I have personally been at this home because it's been a source of many complaints. The conditions inside are deplorable, and that was confirmed by the fire department. We received several complaints from the neighbors, health department regarding the conditions of the home, the amount of junk and debris in the yard and inside. We found 5-gallon buckets of human waste being stored in the kitchen area. And as you can see from the information, this goes on and on and on. I don't have to read the whole thing. At that time, our inspectors have been there, fire marshal. We've tried to get assistance programs to help them out. That has not worked. It's come down to where the house is a dangerous building. It's not inhabitable whatsoever. It cost near $50,000 to fix it. And we had followed the Housing Board of Appeal pathway on this with the notices, so on and so forth. They came and testified in front of Housing Board of Appeals, and that was concurred. The house should be demoed this year, and now it stands before you on 910 Turner Avenue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, you really want to get in that mess?
Michael Howeisen, 903 Turner Avenue. I live kitty corner across the street from this, and I tried to help the family that was living there as best I could, but with limited resources, there wasn't a whole bunch I could do. For the last month, I was trying to work with Safe Build on trying to save the driveway and the garage, because down the road I was going to buy the property if I could get that saved. Well, couldn't get that worked out, and as he mentioned, the deplorable conditions that are there, I was just going to encourage that whoever gets the demo on this to do it as soon as possible, because we've been fighting with bed bugs, roaches, everything that you can think of coming out of that building to our property. And I was just trying to get that resolved before fall or before spring hits, because we're going to have a problem all over again.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Could I get a motion on 1934 Hudson Street, please? Oh, I'm sorry, a vote.
I have a question.
Yep.
So it sounds like there's a family currently living in that address at 910 Turner. I mean, no, not yet? It is vacant now. Okay. So have this family been taken care of? Because that is, I mean, the photos that we saw, I mean, were shocking and definitely deplorable conditions. And so I just wanted to make sure that the family, you know, if they are having to immediately vacate because they're about to tear down, that we're connecting them with the proper services to help them. But it sounds like they're already out. Have they been connected? Is someone helping them? I mean,
our staff, police and fire, have tried everything we could to help them. They've been somewhat confrontational with us. Like I said, this went on for at least a couple years. It really was heated up in 2017. We do know that I think we believe one individual is coming back and breaking in. I don't have to get contents in there or whatever. We then reboarded up, but we believe they have sought shelter other places, but they have not used any of the connections or the resources that we've offered them, to my knowledge.
okay. Yeah, you can lead a horse to water. Thank you.
Anything else? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rinson-Massipiga?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallron?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Now 1934 Hudson. Commissioner
I move
Rinson-Massipiga.
we concur with the Housing Board of Appeals notice in order to demolish 1934 Hudson Street.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Rinson-Massipiga, seconded by the Vice Mayor to concur with the Housing Board of Appeals notice and order to demolish 1934 Hudson Street. Chief?
Reference to 1934 Hudson Street, on June 26th of 2017, Inspections Department received complaints about this location. The home had been vacant since 2015. Prior to the vacancy, the home was sold on an unrecorded land contract, and it was a rental dwelling since 2003. The notice was sent out on July 5th, received, and we had contact with the owner at the August 3rd Housing Board of Appeal meeting. We met with the owners. They discussed their case with the board at that time. They showed interest in, keeping the house and repairing the house and so on and so forth, and they asked for a stay in this situation for a personal matter. I don't know if they can talk about that personal matter, but I don't feel at liberty to talk about that. We then allowed them till September 5th. They came back and again met with the Housing Board of Appeal October 5th again. Contact, and this went on till December 7th at the Housing Board of meeting, at which time the owner did not respond, and we haven't had any contact with him since December 8th until I think recently. So the Housing Board of Appeals concurred to demo this house, and that's why I stand before you today asking that you follow their wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. And the owner is here today? And if we could just get your name and address, sir.
I'm the owner at, my name's Bob Dempsey. I'm the owner of 1934 Hudson. I'm also the kid that in your speech class would pass out in front of a podium, so please bear with me. The house has not been a very high priority with me. My family comes first. My wife has been very ill. She's been in need of a liver, which she received, and that's why I was out of state at the Mayo Clinic with her. During that time that they could not contact me, my phone broke. That's not an excuse, I realize that, but I had no way of contacting anybody from Minnesota. I didn't have the means, no computer or anything like that, but I did work on the application and tried to get it to them. I took pictures of it when I did get a phone and tried to send it to Jay and get it in front of Mr. Briggs, and for some reason it wasn't good enough. But I'd like to continue to work on the house, but I'm not allowed to work on the house without a permit, of course. I'd like to go back back the procedure back up to the housing board for 1 month, so I can get this permits completed and filled out and get started working on the house. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know all your procedures and that, but I was out of the state when the final decision was made to stop. I bring it to this point. So I guess that's what I'm asking, is if I can work with Jay and get the permits and get started working on the house. I know it's been an eyesore. It needs siding, needs windows, needs a roof, but I'm prepared to do all that.
Commissioner Warren?
Could you let us know what your intention with the property is?
I don't want to be a landlord. That's why I sold it originally. I'm too nice a guy, I guess, as far as business, and I'll let renters run over me rather than the other way around, I guess. I just want to get it on the market and sold. Mm-hmm. I know you have a very large deficit as far as homes in the area. I looked on Zillow tonight. You have one in that area under the $55,000 mark, mm-hmm. which this house would be definitely under the $55,000. I feel I could get that house done for less than $15,000 up to code and on the market. And that's what my intentions are, mm-hmm. is to get it to someone that could use a lower value home. But that's my intention, is to sell it.
Okay.
Mr. German?
Yeah, what type of timeline are you looking at? And timeline?
I think I can do it in less than 8 months, maybe a year at the most.
Are you a contractor yourself, or are you?
No, I'm just a machine repairman.
Okay.
But in this time period that this house has been sitting, I have done several upgrades and do-it-yourself projects. I've always done that kind of work. So the roofing I would not do. I definitely contract that out. And if there's like any plumbing or anything like that, I'd be contracting that out. But as far as drywalling and siding and windows and, that type of work I can do. I've done it in the past.
Any other questions from the commissioner?
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. So the estimated cost of repair is $19,300 per the report from Safe Built, but given that you plan on doing a lot of the work yourself, you believe that you can get it done for $15,000 or less,
Correct.
basically, and you have the resources readily available to do that.
Yes, on a time basis. I probably wouldn't have to get a loan or anything.
And you're confident you want to sell this for less than $55,000 or thereabouts, because
For
you
how much?
$55,000 or thereabouts or
Oh,
less.
no, probably
Like,
closer to the $40,000.
closer to $40,000.
Thereabouts.
Okay. How long have you had this property now?
I've had it for years. That was my first house that I bought thinking I'd be a landlord and get rich. Didn't work out.
Yeah, didn't pan out as expected. Yeah.
And that's the reason I sold it on a land contract.
And then it fell back to you. Gotcha. So yeah, I'm just wondering what you ultimately plan on selling it. Is it even a worthwhile investment at this point? But that's a judgment call for you to make, given what its current value is and the amount of work that needs to be put into it, and whether it would sell for that. All right, the mayor's about to explain to you your options. I'm guessing in terms of superintendent control, if we don't refer it back to HBA.
Well, we would have the option of tabling for, 30 to 60 days to allow them time to get back in with Safe Built. That would leave the recommendation standing. And come back for a vote then, correct? Then we'll come back for a vote. If there's not appreciable or satisfactory movement on the property.
I believe that the chief, well, I think he's about to explain it himself.
If we're contemplating giving him a little more timeline, it's much easier to manage it if it's sent back to the Housing Board of Appeals. We have one next week on February 1st, if you could make that. They will re-review the case and give him the timeline. It's much easier to manage. And then if that fails, we will bring it back to you in 60, 90, or 100 days. But I would recommend that, that you not see it at least before 90 days. By the time it goes back, Housing Board of Appeals has a chance to look at his permits and plans thing. It's winter time. Honestly, we would need about 90 days, and then the Housing Board of Appeals could meet in February, the latest March, give him his timeline, and we would follow this like we have been with his situation, and then we would bring it back if all else failed. And that's the easiest for us to manage.
Can he pull permits in that time period?
Yeah, I believe so. That's why if we went back, and then he can work with Safe Built and Jay to do that at that time. But the Housing Board of Appeals would see him come back on February 1st and say, how long do you need? And he would tell them. And then Jay is there, and Kurt Briggs is there. And then that's when we set it up for permits and so on and so forth. And give, like this case, I heard him say some timelines, see if that sounds good. And then usually within 90 to 120 days, we know how things are going. If nothing's happening within 4 or 5 months, obviously we'll be back.
Commissioner Warren?
Yeah, I mean, sorry about your wife and about all that you've been through in that way. I think it's commendable that you're here tonight and that you were faithfully going to the different Housing Board of Appeals meetings. I'm in favor of sending it back to the HBA and as the chief outlined, giving it 90 days or whatever is reasonable in that respect.
Thank you. Commissioner Sherman?
I'm glad that your wife's doing better and she's here, and I think that this commission has a sense of compassion when it comes to certain situations that's uncontrollable. And I'm in favor also of extending this and or tabling it or sending it back to the HBA as well. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I move that we refer this back to the Housing Board of Appeals. Oh, we have to vote no on this and then
Or withdraw.
withdraw it?
Withdraw the motion.
Did I make the motion?
You did?
You did.
I just have I mean, I don't know. we're kind of just, it seems like we don't always follow the same procedure when it comes to this, and I don't really know how we can judge these subjective situations, but I just would think we got to make sure that we're not treating people disparately. I know a number of times when people have come, we've not referred it, so I guess I think we should just take that into consideration, because it's very difficult to tell based on our information. I think we're both basically going off of our Housing Board of Appeals, who spent a lot more time on this. I don't know if Commissioner Turnquist had any, he's on the Housing Board of Appeals. I don't know if you had any input about it.
Yeah, we've worked with this case for many, many months. And I think the Board of Appeals has had a lot of compassion in trying to deal with this case. It does not look good for the neighbors. It's a detriment to the neighborhood. There's a certain amount of danger if you looked at the pictures in there. And you want to have compassion. You want to save every house that comes before us. But it goes on and on and on. And it doesn't get any better. And I don't see how this will get much better asking for 9 months to a year. We've had you and your wife have both appeared at our meetings, and we've tried to work with you, but it just continues to merit any action on your part. And you've owned the home for a long time. Didn't get this way overnight, and we feel we have an obligation to the neighborhood as well.
I understand that. I wanted to get the permits. The first thing I wanted to do was get the roof taken care of, but I was told I couldn't get just the roofing permit. I had to get the permits for the windows and the siding first before I could get the roofing permit. And that's what I'm trying to do, is get the permits. I wanted to do this several months ago, is get the permits. It's just that I don't understand the procedures. And I guess we'll just have to work with Jay a little bit closer and try to get this done. I was asking him, while I was in Minnesota, if I could get it extended for a week after I got back from Minnesota. But that wasn't allowed because of the procedures at the board. So, things would have been different if I hadn't been in Minnesota for a whole month during the transplant and recovery.
I guess I would be comfortable to withdraw, but I would definitely, there's a number of cases. Just reading the report, it seems like there's been numerous lag times when things could have been done, and I too agree. Think that 9 months to a year is an awfully long time to give someone to do this project when they've had this much time, especially if it's only supposed to cost $15,000. That's not a monumental housing renovation project. So,
may I just, prior to you withdrawing?
Sure.
I take what you say to heart, Commissioner Muskegon, in terms of we need to. It is one rare that we refer things back or table it and not concur with the HBA, and I think that you're right in that we need to ensure that we are as objectively as possible looking at when to make those exceptions. I think in this case it's not unreasonable to refer this back to the HBA and give a 90-day window. And during that 90-day window, the gentleman can bring forward a plan, verify that he has the wherewithal and the resources to follow through on that plan, and get this house up to code, and we can save this house and get it on the market and have a new family move in. That would be the best case scenario, and so I'm willing to give more time to pursue that best case scenario. But it will be up to the HBA if they are not satisfied with your plan, and it comes back here, then I'll have to concur with the HBA the next time around.
And if we do get to the point where we're making a motion, leave the time frame up to HBA. They'll set that. Vice Mayor?
Yes. I'd like to know, Just how long have we been dealing with the house in this type of condition?
Like I said, it came to our attention back in June of 2017. But as you can see from the history here, the house had been vacant since 2015. And it had been, then it was sold, and then it was a rental dwelling since 2003. So it sounds to me like since sometime in the early 2000s, it might have started heading downhill as a rental, and then it became vacant, which I don't know if was not able to be occupied. But since 2015, it sat vacant, which is 3 years. Came on our radar back in June of 2017.
Okay. Sir, what was going on during the period of time when the house was vacant in terms of repairs?
My priority, again, was my family. I offered the house to my daughter, and she refused to move into Muskegon from Minneapolis. So I bought her another house in another county, and I remodeled that house during that time. Like I said, this house had not been a priority. I was no longer going to rent it out. I wanted to fix it up, but that other house got in the way to get my daughter away from Minneapolis and back in the Michigan area, and because I didn't want to drive all the way to Minnesota just to see my grandson. Mm-hmm. Also during that time, my wife lost her spleen, she lost her gallbladder, she lost her many of her internal organs, reproductive, and her colon. And I personally took her to the emergency room several times here in Muskegon during that time. And like I said, it was her health, and I just didn't have enough time to do anything other than the projects that I had in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Were you going to say?
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think from staff standpoint, I think we've been pretty clear on these in the past that we would prefer to see these go through superintendent control if we can. And if the individual or property owner really has the means to do it, they put their deposit down. And then if they don't come through, we use that deposit to actually cover the cost of the demolition. It seems to be fair for everybody involved. It's attorney's office has made it a pretty easy process. They're very easy to work with to put the agreements in place. We had a number of them that have successfully been rehabbed through superintendent control. And I would say that our success rate when people go through superintendent control is much higher than it is when we just refer it back to HBA or table it or do those other things. So I would just keep that in mind. I was noticing some folks in the audience, I'm guessing, are either neighbors or on the HBA, and their body language is telling me that they're sick of looking at the house and they want to see it. They want to know it's going to be taken care of, not in a year. Respectful of all the things that the owner has gone through, I think the superintendent control gives him that opportunity. And for us, it forces him to make it a priority, even if something else comes up. And if he doesn't make it a priority, it gives us some resources to tear it down and make sure the neighborhood is able to move on. Because at the end of the day, we have made that neighborhood a priority for the last 3 or 4 years in terms of getting rid of blight. And we've taken a lot of them down in that time. And this is probably one that really needs to go, probably among others. But, it is a priority for us, I guess is my point from a staff standpoint. And having superintendent control gives us the opportunity to make sure it stays a priority for the homeowner as well. So I'd leave that out there before you consider withdrawing.
Commissioner German?
Listening to this gentleman's story about his wife, we know things happen in life that we can't control. Now, I've sat on that Housing Board of Appeals my first 4 years as a commissioner. And I believe in the fairness and equitable, and I mean with the citizens and also business, being business friendly. And there was some preference favoring businesses when it came down to extending or being more lenient. And I think we should do the same for our citizens, especially in this case. If you put yourself in this gentleman's shoes, you probably wouldn't even be thinking about trying to repair a home. Like he said, his first priority is his family, in which he was obligated to do that. I think this gentleman deserves a chance to go ahead and complete this project, and if for some reason it doesn't, then we can start the process over and go ahead and do what we have to do as a commission. So that's my take on that.
Thank you.
One other thing, I don't know how much it costs to get this
Superintendent.
bond or whatever it is. I'd rather put that money towards a house and permits and get this project going. I really want to get it done.
Yeah. I've struggled with that question before when we've said, well, let them appeal for superintendent control. They put up the money for a bond. In the event that they don't follow through, that we've got that money to tear it down. It seems simple and straightforward enough, and it helps ensure us in the event that they don't move forward that the money's there to tear it down. But what I struggle with sometimes is when someone that does not have ample means, but due to extenuating circumstances, they still are committed to. They may not have been able to do it to the timeline that the HBA wanted or that we would have preferred. But they're still committed to doing it. They don't have ample means. They have enough resources to complete this project so they can try to salvage some value out of the home, whether they want to live in it themselves or sell it. And so I struggle with that. My concern is if we do say, hey, you have to go for superintendent control, that you're not going to be in a position to do it. It's just going to get torn down. You're going to lose the value in it. This is a tough one.
But whatever motion we make, because in the past, some motions have been made, or votes were taken just to vote no, and we lose total control. So whatever motion is made, we got to make sure that it's still under our control within the system and within the process, and not just
Agreed. I personally still would like to give this gentleman a little bit more time and leeway to pursue this and have the HBA report back to us in a timely manner.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't think now is the time to talk about the superintendent control process because that's what we've used. So I think that's where we're at today. And when we come to this decision, I don't think we should change policy right now because of one circumstance. There's been 4 other homes, or at least a number in the last 2 where we've put it in superintendent control, and that's been fair. So I mean, we chose to do that. So I'm hesitant to do that without discussing the policy outside of an example or one purpose. So I guess if we're just thinking about this particular instance, again, I just challenge people to think of the other people who've come before us and said, of course people don't want to go through the superintendent control process, but that's the process that we have, and so I just caution people. Maybe this is an example. I don't know. I guess there's some, but I mean, a lot of this, I mean, if you own a rental house, and I mean, I know it's not your first priority, but you still have a responsibility to the property that you own, whether, you own 100 or you own 1, especially if it's not your own home. I feel like it's an investment home and you have, you're going to be held to account for it. It's not, you can't just walk away from stuff. It's next to other people's homes. So, I'm a little bit, it's been a long time. So I'm not against it. And then there has been, the only circumstance I can think of is the 1 month, is that been the similar, but again, when people have argued against us going to superintendent control, there's always some sort of personal circumstance. I look at the report and it was 2 whole months from October 5 to December 8, so that's 60 days, and for the day before to write an email to SafeBuilt and say, well, you're asking for another extension. I mean, that's a long time. So I don't know. It's just a tough decision. I think we should kind of move on, but
Is it permissible to have Jay Paulson talk to us and let us know about how much contact and working has been done during this time frame? As far as we know, we've done a lot.
Well, it was all laid out in Chief's report, and he
Right,
did
it's
the
spelled
review.
out. All the contacts, like
All
you
the
said.
contacts,
couldn't work
the
on it.
dates.
No permits.
I guess, we just got to move on this. I guess I'd move to withdraw it and send it back to the HBA, and have them, deal with it within 90 days.
So you're withdrawing your...
I'm withdrawing the
motion?
The motion to concur.
Will you withdraw your second then, Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a vote on a withdrawal?
Don't think so, no. Okay, so then we would need a motion to refer the matter of 1934 Hudson Street back to the Housing Board of Appeals.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner German, to refer the matter of 1934 Hudson Street back to the Housing Board of Appeals for further consideration, giving the party potential opportunity to pull his permits and get it done. Any further discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
I would just comment that, this isn't the first time we have referred a matter back to HBA or tabled it to give someone more time. While it is rare, we've done it on a number of occasions, at least in my 4 years on this commission, as recently just a couple months ago. And so I just, as Commissioner German indicated, he wants us to be compassionate. And I've heard that from people, just in this last campaign, how I really want to see our city be compassionate. I want City Hall to be compassionate. And that's what they want to see. And while maybe we can't find the perfectly objective parameters to determine which ones get exceptions, which ones don't, that's incumbent upon us as elected representatives to exercise our judgment and discretion. And so that's why I will support referring this back to the HBA. And I wish you and your family all the best.
Thank you.
But I think it's more than a good exercise to go through any level of angst and discussion so that we can reach that point. Is this an appropriate response? Because we do have to be careful. We really do. But I think at this level, it's still kept under the control of the system and the program, and not just voted down. So, any other comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Turnquist?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallron?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Renzibasipiga?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Best of luck and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Item B. under new
Request to
business.
amend the planned unit development at 1740 East Sherman Boulevard, Planning and Economic Development. Summary of request. Request to amend the PUD at 1740 East Sherman Boulevard to allow for the addition of a 5,600 square foot outbuilding and to increase the signage allotment. Staff recommendation, staff recommends approval of the final PUD. Committee recommendation, the request was unanimously recommended for approval at the December 14th Planning Commission meeting.
Go to get a motion. Commissioner Renzibasipiga?
I move we approve the request to amend the plan unit development at 1740 East Sherman Boulevard.
Support.
Been moved by Commissioner Renzibasipiga, seconded by Commissioner Warren to approve the amendment for the PUD at 1740 East Sherman Boulevard. Mr. Franzik.
Good evening.
Evening.
So this is a two-part request. One is for the addition of the outbuilding. It'll be about a 6,000 square foot building that'll host two food-related businesses. We can't release them yet, but one of them will have a drive-through. There's going to be plenty of parking on site. In fact, there's probably excess parking there now. So this will be good to reduce kind of that concrete blight and also help with the stormwater management. They came in with a great landscaping plan as well, went above and beyond with that. The second part of the request is for the sign amendments. This is kind of a tricky development here because there's 3 separate parcels within the one development, which kind of gives them different options for signs. So they have the 2 large pole signs, one facing the highway and one facing Sherman. Those are both allowed already. What's not allowed is the smaller 10 by 10 sign for the outbuilding. However, with the PUD, we can make exceptions, and I and the Planning Commission agreed that this is definitely worth making the exception. You can see in the paperwork, there's actually a lack of signage in this area, which is pretty uncommon for this type of large, big box development, all shoved into one small area. So you can look at other areas of the city and other cities where the signs are a lot more congested. So we think with the small addition of signage for the outbuilding would be appropriate. It'll also help alleviate adding them to the larger pole signs, which can be more distracting. Along with that additional sign, they would like to increase the pole sign facing Sherman from 33 foot tall to 35.5 foot tall, and switch it from 326 total square feet to 356 total square feet, and that'll be to accommodate the 3 businesses that will be going into the former Target building.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Franzik? Okay.
So this is all just new construction, right? That
Yes.
building?
The outbuilding is all new construction. The former Target building is being split up into 3 retailers. That does not need Planning Commission or City Commission approval, though.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioners? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallron?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Rinzabasiga?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item C, please.
Authorization to engage Fletcher and Sippel, City Manager. Summary request. City staff is requesting authorization to enter into a service agreement with Fletcher and Sippel LLC in an effort to secure the elimination of the unused railroad track that currently traverses the Windward Point parcel. At this time, we are only formally seeking the abandonment of this section of the track, but expect that our success in doing so may positively impact our ability to remove additional sections running from downtown through Lakeside. Staff recommendation to approve the request and authorize the city manager to enter into the service agreement with Fletcher and Sippel.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
I move to approve the request and authorize the city manager to enter into the service agreement with Fletcher and Sippel LLC.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner German to approve the request and authorize the city manager to enter into the service agreement with Fletcher and Sippel. Any questions? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see that the interested parties referenced in the fee and service agreement include Pure Muskegon LLC, the City of Muskegon, as well as MCC Partners LLC. Who all is paying for FNS's services? I see we're authorizing to approve not to exceed $33,000. Do we know what the total cost of these services, an estimate expected to be, and who else is shouldering that cost?
Sure. Well, one, we don't know what the costs are going to be. I think the cost will be determined based on how agreeable CSX is to the abandonment. So if there's a chance that we have to go through the whole adverse abandonment process, we think it could cost somewhere around $100,000. We're only committed to $33,000. So what we're proposing to do is go into it essentially on a 50-50 basis with these 3, and with the 3 entities, us and then and the 2 entities. And then our cap would be $33,000. The goal is to try to settle it quickly so that it's not expensive for anybody. But we're not quite sure how open CSX will be to abandoning the rail line.
And it says budget action required, none at this time. Is that indicative of we're using money from the Economic Development Fund to cover this cost? Is it allocated somewhere else in our budget? Where's this up to $33,000 coming from at this time?
Oh, we haven't allocated it yet. I'll probably, one of two things after talking with our council, I'll probably either add it to, where we pay for our legal fees now, or if we think that there's a chance we can get any of it reimbursed potentially, maybe we'll try to run it through one of the other funds, like the Brownfield Fund or something like that. I'm not sure if any of it's reimbursable. Likelihood that it is not. But the big thing for us was we want to get them engaged now so we could get working on it, because really it could take upwards of a year to get it, through to fruition if we go the full length.
Mm-hmm. And why can our own legal counsel not pursue this? Just don't have that expertise, that background, the knowledge set, or like, why do we need to contract with a third-party legal counsel?
Yeah, it's really expertise thing. These are very, very technical. They're very specialized going through this process. And we talked about, there's a chance that we could get them all, get John or somebody on his staff up to speed, on the legalities of going through the process. But that will cost a lot of time, one, bring them up, and two, what about the kind of the unwritten rules, and the expectations and things like that exist, in that industry that we just don't know and we're not going to find in the books generally. In addition to that, it was a timing issue, so we thought it made sense to reach out to a law firm that is already engaging with the same railroad organizations. So, for example, this one was chosen. They do have a relationship with the lobbyists in the industry. They have relationships at with the railroads themselves. So we think that will give us the easiest, quickest way to get in with them and try to get to a settlement. But it also gives us the most knowledge if we do have to go further with a trial.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to the next question or potential concern. You're right that they work with a lot of railroad and carriers and companies, and so they've, including other clients that they'd indicated, and I'd like to hear the legal counsel's view on this, but it indicated that we're asking the interested parties, ourselves and the other two LLCs, to agree that F&S may assert arguments and theories in other cases on behalf of those other clients that may be viewed as adverse to the interested parties. And so how does this happens? You may have one client, you get another client, and you may be arguing X and arguing Y. You're trying to represent both faithfully, but in doing so, you may be actually countering what you're trying to argue in the other hand. And so if they were, and they say that they don't expect this to be a problem, they don't anticipate this being an issue at this time, but if it were to, what are and our case gets undermined and we are not able to vacate that property because of something that they've argued in another case, contrary to our interests.
We in Council for Pure Muskegon would be apprised if they needed to make an argument in some other case that would be adverse to the position here. We would evaluate it and make a decision and may well indicate that they need to get off our case.
Okay.
We would need to find alternate counsel. Frankly, we found this counsel through a different firm in DC who does not represent either of these parties but was uncomfortable in an adverse position to them.
Okay.
This firm in Chicago, on the other hand, is just wrapping up an abandonment case against CSX in Grand Rapids. It was a Grand Rapids company, but the litigation all occurs out in DC.
Okay. Gotcha. Which is further justification why we want to go with them then.
Well, and both Council for Pure Muskegon and us thought, you're in a really specialized area. It makes no sense to try and get up to speed on that. That's just counterproductive.
Okay.
And frankly, the rates are not that excessive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So essentially, if that conflict comes up, we'll be notified immediately and apprised, and we can decide how to proceed going forward from there.
Right.
Okay, I appreciate that. And that's why you're right. I was wondering about the rates, if they were excessive or not. Because
our first choice was $4.50 an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So I wonder though, we're saying not up to exceed 33,000, but essentially, Frank, you indicated that we maybe end up paying half. We're one of 3 interested parties. Why would we end up paying half? I want us to be partners, especially on this project that is significant and hugely important to the future of Muskegon, and that's why we've already allocated $75,000 from our economic development fund to go towards the master planning of the site. Why should we shoulder half? Why wouldn't we include language that says we will pay a third, not to exceed $33,000?
Yeah, and really we could propose it to them that way. We've talked about it essentially the way that I explained it in the past. There are 3 parties on there, but the reality is, that the land area that we're talking about is 90% of it is really 2 parties. It's Muskegon and Windward Point. The MLCC is just a portion that kind of continues on past the Windward Point property that's owned by the Country Club. Yeah, okay. So it's really a small portion of it. And to an extent, they're really the same people.
They are.
So the reality is it's 2 groups splitting it 50-50, but we were committing up to a third of the cost, assuming that we go to full. We go to the,
Exceeds $100,000.
Yeah, assuming it gets up to that $100,000 mark, we wanted some. We were comfortable getting about a third of it, but we were also comfortable saying, yeah, it's really just 2 of us, so let's split it up to our $33,000 threshold.
Okay, that seems sensible. Thanks for explaining that. And just one final question on this matter, because I did notice in your memo, it was in your staff, the memo on the top, on the 3rd page. You'd indicated why we weren't going to go for the full length of the track throughout Lakeside. We're just going after vacating of the track at Windward Point and on the Country Club property. And you had indicated that we're not currently seeking the abandonment of the entire line at this time because we feel that a stronger argument for no further use can be made for this site, while there could be potential for further use in other sections of the track that are currently zoned for industrial uses. So presently, Windward Point is still zoned industrial.
Correct.
So is our case undermined in trying to get that vacated because it's still industrial? Should we be moving forward with a PUD at this time or rezoning it something else in the meantime till we do a PUD so that we strengthen our case as to why no further use rationale for vacating is at this time?
We talked about that. I think the reality is because they're partnering with us and they're at the table and they're asking for it and they're making it clear that they have no intention. They're going to demonstrate what they're doing, what their plans are for SAPI. Even though we have not actually done the rezoning yet there, it's very clear what their intentions are. And those are the owners standing there saying, we're not going to use it for industrial. The reason we said it about the other ones was because we wouldn't have those owners necessarily at the table. Mm-hmm. And so for example, the old Michigan Steel property, do we think that there's ever going to be an end use there that's using rail? Probably not, but we don't have as strong of an argument to go to them and say it needs to be abandoned here, for example, because we're not in control of that particular property. Mm-hmm. So we thought though it would at least give us an avenue to look at doing that at a later date. See how open CSX is, and if they end up being very open to it, and we take care of this one, then it gives us like a kind of roadmap to follow as the other properties kind of come on board. Because really the goal is that spur just doesn't exist anymore at some point in the future. Yeah. But this is the only one that has real imminent development happening on it, to where the tracks themselves could dictate what the ultimate, what the property looks like, what homes can sell for, what the development, how the development lays out. And so this is the one that was important to us. Mm-hmm. And the thought was, this one's going to be hard enough to kind of make the case. We didn't want to complicate it by trying to argue with other about other properties, at least right now. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, I think we can all agree that development ultimately will have the maximum value if we get rid of that rail line. So I hope and pray that we're successful in this endeavor to get that portion of the track vacated. So I'll support this. Thank you for your answers and explanations. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mayor Gowron?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Commissioner Rinsa-Massibiga?
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Under other business.
No, we have D.
Still one more item.
D? Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. Item D.
Authorization to engage Progressive AE City Manager. Summary request. City staff is requesting authorization to engage Progressive AE to undertake the architectural design work associated with the planned downtown convention center. Engaging an architectural firm is the next step in making final determinations of the size, location, amenities, and costs associated with the convention center. Total architectural and engineering fees are expected to be $832,800 plus reimbursable expenses. 100% of related costs will be reimbursed through county accommodations tax receipts. Staff recommendation to approve the request and authorize the city manager to enter into the service agreement with Progressive AE.
Commissioner Turnquist?
Oh, do you want a motion first before we?
Yes, sir.
I would move that we approve the request from city manager authorizing to engage Progressive AE.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Turnquist, supported by Commissioner Muskegon, to approve the request and authorize the city manager to enter into the service agreement with Progressive A&E. Who's leading on this one?
That would be me.
Okay, you.
Okay, so commissioners probably recall, we talked probably about, it's been a number of months now, about the idea of the what we call the 441 plan, where accommodations taxes are increased on, or at least the self-assessments are increased on the Holiday Inn and the Shoreline Inn, and then some accommodations taxes are captured from the other hotels in the, I guess not the county, some other accommodations tax are captured from the Holiday Inn and the Shoreline Inn as well, and then those dollars are used to fund downtown convention center. So the next step really in moving that process forward, we had previously engaged Progressive AE over a year ago to kind of put together the, work with the hotels and the convention goers and the event planners to talk about what made the most sense in terms of where should this thing be located, how much is it going to cost on ballpark and stuff like that. And so we end up with a few ideas, and we whittled it down, and right now at this point that the concept that we're asking them to kind of finalize is a big box that essentially connects the Holiday Inn and the L.C. Walker Arena, and it's kind of set back behind where you would see rackets and things like that. So it doesn't take away any buildings per se, but it does stop traffic flow on 4th Street. So it's essentially building convention center in place of 4th Street. And so what we're asking them to do is to finalize that concept, make sure that concept will work, get us some really hard construction costs, and really what we've essentially told them was we think we have X number of dollars to build with. I think it was about $12 or $13 million to build with, and then they're going to design a structure within that budget is the plan there. And then so they'll design it for that budget. Once we approve with the design and the layout and we make sure it all makes sense for the Holiday Inn, then we'll engage them in actually putting together construction drawings. So this $832,000 that you see here, that's for the whole, from start to finish. We'll probably initially engage them. If you read in there, there's about 23% of the costs are allocated to that first component, and that's what we would engage with them first in terms of getting the more solid conceptual drawings done. Probably some questions as to why we didn't bid this out and we didn't do an RFP. Progressive AE has been working on this project with us really for well over a year. We were worried about two things: one, taking a step back in terms of timeline, and two, taking a step back in terms of local contractors that have history and ability to build convention centers. If you look through their package there, you'll see the work that they've done in Port Huron for their convention center, what they've done at the DeVos Center, and what they've done for a number of larger convention centers here in Michigan and in the Midwest. And so we felt that we were in the best position if we stuck with Progressive AE. So what we asked them to do was use the state's guidelines. The state has some guidelines in terms of what architectural engineering costs should be for convention centers. So we used those to figure out, based on the guidelines, what the cost would be, and it was about $892,000. And then we took that number, and they gave us about a $60,000 discount from that to demonstrate that they were being competitive, even absent a competitive bid process. So we end up with that $832,000 $832,800 cost for that. 100% of the cost will be reimbursed to the city through those accommodations taxes and the hotel self-assessment from the Holiday Inn and the Shoreline Inn. So while we do, I wouldn't want to say that there isn't any risk. The goal here is that there's net no cost out of pocket for the city on this, although we might have some upfront costs and have some reimbursement coming in from them. I know we have Bob Lukens and Mark Eisenbarth here, as well as John Rooks and Doug Pollock, if we have questions specifically about the process and how we're working together to kind of pull this off.
Commissioner Warren?
I don't actually know who is most appropriate to answer this question, but I'm wondering, with this service agreement, does this lock us into using any particular skilled labor when it comes to the actual building process?
No, and actually, we were reached out to from probably the same individual that reached out to you. We're very open to talking with those folks, and actually, Ben Cross from the county commission reached out to the mayor and I many months ago, letting us know that the building trades association would be coming to us with an idea that could be mutually beneficial for both, and so we're very open to learning about what that could look like.
Okay. Commissioner German?
So we're actually looking to do what we call a community benefit agreement or somewhat.
Yeah, that's what they have asked us.
Okay,
Yep, that's what we're looking
yeah,
at.
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like to say I'm in favor of this. As you know, I've talked about a convention center, in my first years of, as a commissioner, and I always said, my 3 C's, college presence, downtown, convention center, and a casino. I don't know if we're going to get that or not, but hey, that's going to drive traffic, the development. We have a robust downtown, and I think, we're on the right track. And I like to also say publicly, Frank, your planning, your expertise, and, networking out there with business owners, I think you're doing a good job, and this is what it takes to get momentum going and working together with business owners, the community, and a commission that's on the same page. So, good work. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Muskegon?
I don't really have a question about the architect and engineering services. I think that seems like a good way to go. It makes a lot of sense. The price seems reasonable. I know we've had some projects with the college, and they've cost more than this as a percentage, so it's definitely in the market. I'm wondering if we have any idea. We talked about the construction, about if it's going to be like a construction management or a general contract bid process.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten quite that far yet. We're still kind of putting agreements together to really determine, what exactly the role the city is going to play versus the county versus Parkland, and so we're ferreting those out right now. But ultimately, we'll sit down and try to determine which one really makes the most sense for us. And we've talked to the architect, and they've kind of said, well, sometimes this one works really, really well, and sometimes the other one works very, very well as well. So really, probably once we get it built and once we really understand once we get the drawings done and we really understand what our timelines are and how tight our budgets are, for example, then we'll really be able to, to kind of determine the path there.
So will it be the city that lets that construction bid, or is that still to be determined then too? Because we're letting this one.
Yeah, that's our expectation, that it will be the city.
Okay.
That's the way we expect the documents to move, because we'll be ultimately financing the construction.
Then it would seem to make a lot of sense to be the contract holder and ensure that the job is done right.
Correct.
You want to get water?
The process of selecting A&E, was that a threefold purpose, just done by us? How?
Well, when we originally selected Progressive AE, the county went through their normal procurement process. So a year ago, they put out requests for proposals, and a number of architects submitted proposals to do the original concept, and do the design charrettes and things like that. And so they were selected competitively to do the original design, and then we decided that it made sense if we were comfortable that their price was competitive, that we stick with them through the remainder of the project, because they had already done so much work on it. They had already engaged, with our hotel owners and with our event planners, and they had a really good idea of what we expected out of the project, and they had a really keen understanding of what our budget was and how tight our budget was, and they showed that when they came in with their price here too. As Commissioner Reeves-Simming pointed out, they were well under what we would say the industry standard, but at the same time they're very well qualified to do it, and probably as local as we were going to get in terms of qualified architectural firms.
Okay. Commissioner Warren?
So does this mean that the hotel self-assessment has already started?
Yes.
That's already been put on
Yes.
rooms and all of that?
Look at Doug. How many months has that been happening?
November 1st. November 1st.
Started November 1st.
Okay, great.
Okay. Commissioner Jeremy?
Yeah, just one last question. Could you explain also how the tax capture will happen? So, because I know I'm going to get questions from citizens in the community about that.
Yeah. So right now, when you go and stay at a hotel in the county, based on the cost of your hotel room, there's a 5% accommodations tax added on there. What's going to happen now are the hotels in the city, which happen to just be these two at this moment in time, but any future ones that are built in the city while this agreement is going on, they'll actually pay the 5% plus they'll pay a 4% self-assessment. So if you stay at the Holiday Inn or the Shoreline Inn, if your bill's $100, you'll have $9 worth of tax instead of $5 worth of tax. Of those $9, essentially 8 of them will go to building this convention center. One of the dollars will go back to the CVB to fund other CVB activities. The pro formas tell us that when the convention center comes in, we can expect a spike in overnight stays at these hotels, especially during the off season. And that was the reason why we decided to build a convention center, was because we recognize that most of the convention traffic comes in the off season for us. So it comes in the late fall, it comes in the winter, it comes in the early spring. So those are room nights that otherwise are not being, they're not being allocated to anybody right now. So we expect that the growth in overnight stays and the growth in overnight, accommodations revenues will even though we're taking 4 of those percentage points away from the CVB now, that the growth will actually put more dollars in the long run back into their coffers, because of the extra money coming in to all of the hotels as a result of this.
Right. And no cost to the taxpayers, property owners, right?
No cost to the property owners. The only way that a Muskegon resident or a Muskegon County resident would pay in is if they happen to stay at one of these 2 hotels. So if they decided to have a staycation or stay a few nights at the Holiday Inn, then they would be paying it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
So let's assume for a moment that the project doesn't move forward and it never gets built, but we've paid for this design. The self-assessment's going right now. So are we confident then that we'd get paid back regardless of whether or not the convention center ever happens? Because the self-assessment's going already, there's an agreement in place with the county and ATAC, so that money's going to come back to us to reimburse us for $832,000 regardless of what happens with the convention center.
I'm confident that our city attorney will make sure that language is included when we sign these agreements. Yes.
Okay.
Right, Mark?
Want to make sure.
Yeah.
So
The expectation really is that Parkland wants this built. They're very interested in seeing it built. They have a lot to gain from it, as does the downtown. The city has a lot to gain from it, and the county has a lot to gain from it. So it's really all 3 parties. It's a win all the way across. It would take something pretty catastrophic for us to, for this not to be built.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to see it built as well. I think it would be great for our downtown. So I've supported the letter of intent, and I support it now. I just want to make sure that we are protected as well as possible. Our citizens are protected as well as possible from that catastrophic incident or something to that effect, or for some reason we don't move forward with the convention center. So with regard to the CBA, the Community Benefits Agreement, and the Project Labor Agreement that the West Michigan Building and Construction Trades Association or Council has talked about with us already and said they want to present to us and discuss that option, you've already informed, you've already had some kind of conversation with the county commissioner, the chair, Ben Cross, but have you also informed Progressive AE that, hey, this is likely what we're going to be doing, this is likely what we want as part of this construction and build out and design, is that we want something like this involved? Because when we approved the letter of intent, I emphasized that I really want to see as much of this money that's going into designing, building, and constructing and operating the convention center to stay in Muskegon and circulate in Muskegon and benefit our community as much as possible. And I would love to see local tradespeople working there. And so I just want reassurance that they are either aware that that's likely the direction, given that the county and the city both are saying, hey, this is kind of what we're leaning towards, that they're aware, or that you're going to make them aware.
Yeah, we can make them aware. I think really the group that's most important to make aware is when we do decide to use a construction manager or hire a general contractor. They're the ones that need to understand what the expectation is there from a hiring standpoint. There's a chance that Progressive AE maybe could use some local engineers. My guess is that all of the staff they need from an engineering and architectural standpoint to undertake this is already in-house in their organization. So I'd be surprised if they contracted much of anything out from the architectural side. So I think that conversation really needs to happen if we end up using builder A, B, or C, that they understand that we expect the subcontractors to come from a local pool.
Mm-hmm. Do we have anyone from Progressive AE here tonight?
No, they could not make it. They told me I could call them if we needed to, but that doesn't really work out very well. But they couldn't make it today, no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we will be hearing from them, because in their proposal it says that after the development design phase, that they'll pause the process so that the county commission can review the package that has been created along with the budget and construction schedule. So they'll be conferring with the city commission as well, or in lieu of. It's not just the county is going to sign off and we're going to be
correct. That's
putting
probably
a bill for bonding it and everything else.
That's probably just a carryover. Originally, they started putting the contract together, assuming that they were pitching to the county, and then we reminded them, hey, technically, you're going to need to pitch it to the city commission. So they updated their proposal. There could be some spots where they missed it and didn't change city commission to city council. My expectation is, probably the county commission is going to want to see, and we're going to want to see. So they'll probably end up having to do both.
Which is only fair. I think. We're collaborating together, and we should be working side by side on this. So that's
many times they meet at 3:30, and then we're meeting at 5:30. So it should make one trip into town, and they should be able to hit both meetings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they're quoting us $832,800, but there may be additional reimbursable expenses in addition to that. We're just going to be cutting checks. We're not going to put a cap or anything. We're just going to be cutting checks.
We've talked about putting a cap. We can talk to them about a cap. The reimbursables are mostly going to be travel and things like that here. So we can control some of that stuff if we temper our meetings, if we don't have them coming, say, to present in front of the commission as much. Those are the sorts of things that are going to probably push up their reimbursables. So the big thing is that when we do meet with them, when they come into town, we cover everything we need to cover, and then they go back to work and they don't come back into town as frequently as more frequently than they have to. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that we're going to really keep those reimbursables down.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Ricibisibigo,
Yes.
Commissioner Turnquist,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Gowron.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Under any other business, city manager report.
All right, I got to move a couple things to you guys. Break here.
We have a break.
Grandson, when he was skating, he started off with a little walker. When he was skating, 15 minutes later, he was lost. It's picked up so easily.
Absolutely. Yep. Do you want me to get the light? You good?
Yeah, you. I think people can see it. Okay. Are we waiting, who are we waiting for to come back? Just
That's the new freedom.
Oh, for sure. I think I'll just stand over here. Sure. If that's okay.
Stretch your legs.
I don't know, but we have to wait for John, unless you want me to. This way.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so I was asked to put together an update for the city commission. I think by a large update was really because we knew we were going to have a lot of folks here interested in this topic. So we figured that we would put together an update to kind of see where city management stands and kind of see where we are from, at least from a staffing standpoint for 2018. We've heard a lot of, I guess, chatter about our staffing levels over the last 6 or 8 months. And this will give us a little idea of where we see the issue and, you know, what we've been trying to do to deal with it. So this, if you recall, this is what a slide from June where we said, you know, what were the problems and what were we trying to address? One of them was this idea that rising employee costs and, you know, what we were calling excessive leave time had really pushed the cost of Muskegon Fire Department personnel to what we would consider unsustainable level. We tried to mitigate that issue over the years, but those personnel costs continue to rise. Without changes in 17-18, we were expected those personnel costs to be about $4.49 million. That's like base salary, overtime, fringe benefits, taxes, anything that's really assigned to an individual employee. That's an average number. As you could imagine, we have some employees that are well above that, and we have a number of newer employees that are well below that. But base salaries were about $2.195 million, and then overtime and fringes were about $2.295 million, so it was pretty much 1-to-1. Every dollar that we expected to spend on base salaries, we expected to spend a whole nother dollar on fringe benefits and overtime. So average personnel costs across the city, again, this is a slide from last June. In the firefighters, it was about $132,000, and the police department is about $104,000. When we say average civilians were just under $100,000. You see the numbers of full times we had on there, 34, 88, and 38. The same personnel costs, if those were stretched throughout every city employee, all 160 of them, personnel costs in the general fund would rise 34% from $15 million to $21 million if everybody costs $132,000 a year. So our issue was, should $4.9 million get us more than it was getting us? It was getting us here, 11 people on a shift with a minimum staffing of about 8. But if it was $120,000 a person, or $110,000 or $100,000 a person, you see that we ended up with more. So if firefighters cost an average of $100,000 a person, well, for that same price, we could have 15 people on a shift with a minimum staffing of 12. $3 million is a number that I asked for, right? If you remember that back in June. And so with $132,000 apiece, that only gets us about 7 per shift with a 4-person minimum staffing. But at $100,000 per fireman, it gets us 10 and 7. And then we're on pace to be at about $3.6 million for the year. It's getting us 9 and 6. We've been hearing that a lot, that we end up with 6 a lot. But that's what $3.6 million seems to get us on a daily basis. 9-person 9 people scheduled for a shift with a minimum of 6 working. But at $100,000, that would get us 12 per shift and minimum of 9 working. So effective October 2014, base and schedule staffing was raised from 9 to 10. If you recall, we hired some new firefighters for the first time in a number of years. And then in March of 2015, we hired some more and we raised it up to 11. Prior to 2014, at least in the few years leading up to 2014, we were at 9 per shift, just like we are today. But effective in November and December 2017, base and scheduled shifts were reduced back down to 9. 6 firefighters were lost to attrition. None of them have been replaced to date. But benefit time actually lowered what we actually had. So even though we might schedule 11, or right now we might schedule 9, sometimes we have 5 and we use overtime to get back up to 6. Sometimes we have 7, sometimes we have 8, sometimes we have 9. Muskegon Fire Department is scheduled with 9 firefighters every day. That is true to this day. It was true today, it was true yesterday, it's true tomorrow. There were no days in 2017 where less than 9 were originally scheduled and compensated to work. Most days through through October 2017, we actually had 11 scheduled to work. But we must accommodate requests for benefit time. It's by contract, and we don't really have a choice but to accommodate it. So even if that impacts immediate staffing levels, we do accommodate it. We can't control this. We tried rescheduling vacations, and we did lose an arbitration telling us that we could not do that. So we do know that we cannot reschedule a vacation day right now. So that means it's 100% driven by choices by individual firefighters. More firefighters eligible to utilize, most of our firefighters eligible to utilize up to 576 hours of total benefit time. That's vacation, personal, sick, and ELD time. How does that break down? Once you have 15 years of service here, you get 12 duty days or 288 hours. Personal leave, if you have 10 years of service, you get 2 duty days or 48 hours. Sick leave, you earn half a duty day for every month, adds up to 144 hours annually. And we have these elective days where every firefighter is awarded 4 elective days each year. It's 96 hours. Now, firefighters are scheduled to work in a 28-day rotation, if you see on here. So each month, we have 2 shifts that are working 9 days and 1 shift that's working 10. The idea is these ELD days are supposed to compensate them for that extra day that they're working. So that 1 shift that worked 10 in January would have an ELD day, and then a different shift would work 10 in February and have an ELD day, and a different shift in March, and so on. But in Muskegon, it's a little bit different because we award these days to everybody on the shift, regardless of whether you work 10 days or not. So if you're scheduled for 10 days and you use benefit time on 1 day or 2 days or 5 days, you still earn that ELD day. So that our elective days aren't so much earned as they are awarded to everybody. Everybody gets 96 hours every single year. The amount of available time off is difficult to manage from our standpoint, but its effect on staffing could be minimized from our standpoint if we could get people to schedule a little bit more responsibly. So contractually, we must let off 3 per shift every day. We also must accommodate sick time, bereavement time, and other emergency leaves that happen in addition to those three folks off. And many times we're missing 4 or 5 firefighters from a single shift. In order to accommodate benefit time usage, staffing minimum had to be removed. Although we remained staffed with 10 or 11, as I said, through October of 2017, in order to accommodate benefit time, we had to let staffing fall as low as 6 folks on duty. So firefighters use benefit time. Well, that causes overtime and part-time wages. Historically, they're used to to backfill for the missing firefighters. So you can see in 2013, we had 4,400 hours of overtime used, but we also paid $317,000 in part-time wages. All of that was to keep our staffing at 9, even though we had more folks scheduled. In 2014, we used 7,600 hours of overtime, plus we paid $224,000 to part-time folks to come in and cover shifts. In 2015, we had 7,000 hours of overtime, and then 2016, after some changes that we made internally, we cut that number down to 2,700, and then 2017, we've got down to 1,354. But the stacking of benefit time has cost the city really millions of dollars since 2013. And what we mean by stacking and benefit time is it's more than one person on a shift using benefit time concurrently, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 using benefit time concurrently. So here's some examples. In 2015 alone, sick time was used on 115 work days, but 95 of those days, or 82% of those days, overtime was needed to meet minimum staffing, meaning that 2 or more people were already off. Overtime hours on days where sick time was also used exceeded 2,676 hours in 2015. And benefit time on holidays alone resulted in 300 hours of holiday pay, 2.5 times rate, so not 1.5, 2.5 times, while personnel also received 2,640 hours of holiday pay in addition to regular pay. So here's some examples. We were asked, and before I get into this, I was essentially told that I needed to provide real life examples here. So I took that as a challenge to provide some real life examples. It doesn't make me happy to provide real life examples, but I think it's the only way to get the point across of how this stuff works. So here's an example from 2014. Right, on this particular day, we had 6 people gone. We had 2 on vacation, 1 on ELD. We had 1 sick. We had 1 training shift away and 1 person on light duty over here. So what did that do when all those people were gone on one day? Well, it resulted in 24 hours of acting pay and 112 hours of overtime, right? Including 1 employee who was actually on an ELD day and working 14 hours of overtime. So he was able to take the day off with pay using his ELD day and then come back and backfill for the short staffing and earn 14 hours of overtime. This one day alone costs our taxpayers $4,500 in wages, just wages. We're not talking about pension contributions, we're just talking about wages. Here's another example from just really a couple weeks later. This was actually on Memorial Day, so this is a good example here. We had 611 of the shift members again were absent. Made 72 hours of acting pay and 72 hours of holiday overtime, including 1 person again on ELD day working overtime. This day cost us $4,900 in wages alone. Here's another day from 2015. 6 of 11 folks absent, 48 hours of acting pay, 96 hours of overtime. There's 4 people absent up here and 2 people trading shifts. So of all the folks that were scheduled, 6 of them were absent from the shift.
No, that's wrong.
That's okay.
Hold up. There's only 4 people absent that day. The trade time means somebody's working in.
Okay, so of all the people scheduled, of the actual individuals scheduled, 6 of the individuals scheduled were not there. Some of them had it backfilled with overtime. Some of it had it backfilled via a trade agreement with a coworker. Cost to taxpayers, though, is $3,900, one day alone. Again, moving on, here's another example. We have somebody on vacation and making overtime at the same time. Right? So 3 people were absent, but it created 48 hours of overtime, including somebody on overtime, upgraded to a bat chief, making overtime, while on vacation at the exact same time. Cost of taxpayers, $1,900. Again, actually save employee 24 hours of off-duty time, 24 hours of overtime at the exact same time. 6 people missing from the shift, 96 hours of acting pay, 96 hours of overtime. Cost of taxpayers, $3,900 for one day. And to point this out, this is in addition to what we would have already paid for all those folks to be there. Here's another one. If you notice that there's a little bit of repetition here. The funny thing is we decided that we wanted to show a few of these, and we actually probably are, I'm only going to show you probably about 10% of what we found. There were just too many of them to show. But again, you see it here, 6 of 11 members absent, 48 hours of acting pay, 48 hours of overtime, including 1 person working overtime as a bat chief while on vacation. Cost of taxpayers, another $1,900. Here's another example, 12/14, 12/26, and 12/31 of 2014 over this period of time. You see there are 10 firefighters absent from shifts over that period of time, created 168 hours of overtime, including we have 1 person working overtime on vacation, another person overtime on ELD, another person overtime on vacation, and another person overtime on ELD. Cost of taxpayers, $6,800 on these 3 days. Here's another example of August 29th and 30th consecutive days. We had 7 firefighters absent on one day and 3 on the next. 144 hours of overtime paid. We have somebody right here on overtime on the 29th and then vacation on the 30th. We have somebody over here on overtime on the 29th, vacation on the 30th, and overtime on the 30th. Cost of taxpayers, $5,800. Here's another one, 9/4, 9/5, 9/6, and 9/7 consecutive days. You can kind of see we have somebody on overtime and then off duty on vacation, then on overtime again, then off duty on vacation. Here we have somebody on vacation and then working overtime the next day, somebody on ELD working overtime the next day. So we're not getting any more work out of these folks. They're just working different days than the ones that they bid on. But you see the cost here is $8,791. So you can imagine the costs accumulate over and over again, day after day after day. Here's an example of somebody's pay stub, actually just from this Christmas season. You can see over here, the first pay stub of the month, we had 24 hours of vacation time used, only 2.5 hours of overtime used. Pay stub was $3,157 was their gross income. The very next 2-week period, exercised 72 hours of vacation time, but still ended up with a paycheck that was over $2,000 more. So they actually worked less on this week than they worked on this pay period than they worked on this pay period, or a very similar amount of time on this pay period as this pay period, but their paycheck was 61% more. 61% more an increase for the exact same amount of work. So this is what our overtime hours look like right here. So you see year in and year out. These were, if you look at the higher years in 2014 and 15, and some of the lower years in 16 and in 17 right here, and that's where we see as part of the issue here. You know, the benefit time hasn't changed. The usage of benefit time has been relatively similar, if not more, in 2017 than it has in previous years. But the reason that people are up in arms is because we stopped paying all this overtime, and we started trying to be a little more realistic to our taxpayers. This is a good example of how this overtime overlays over personal time. So if you look up here, this dark line up here is all of the benefit time used since 2014, so 15, 16, and 17. What we're seeing here is overtime, and as you can imagine, as benefit time is used, overtime costs go up. Again, we stopped it over here, and you see the cost is staying down, but the benefit time usage is up. This is one particular employee who I won't call out, but you can see on here, this person, month after month in the summertime, was able to exercise benefit time, right here 140 hours of benefit time in the month of July, but still earn 180 hours of overtime in the same month. And we see it again the next July, and we see it the next July to some extent after we fix it, and then we see here where we actually fix the problem. The benefit time is still there, that employee still was not here, but he didn't earn any overtime, not as much. But if you add up here, the notes are there were 1,963 hours of benefit time used by this employee in this 4-year period. He also had a near identical 1,921 hours of overtime. So essentially, every hour that this person took off, he worked overtime. Or conversely, every hour of overtime he worked, he then took another day off. So we got the exact same amount of work time off this individual over here, but at a cost of about $160,000 more in pay and benefits than we would have had he just worked the shifts that he was working. So beginning April 2016, staffing minimums were lowered. We talked about that. This is what we had in 2016. We had 11 firefighters 28 times, 10 firefighters 99 times, 9 firefighters 135 times, 8 firefighters 103 times. For 2017, after we made the changes, at least partway through the year, we had 11 firefighters for 36 times, 10% almost, 10 firefighters 57 times, 9 firefighters 82 times, 8 firefighters 131 times, 7 firefighters 40 times, and 6 19 times. Those 19 times, really about 11 of those, or 12 of those came in consecutive days at the end of the year, so Christmas time. So from about the 18th through the end of the year, maybe a little bit before that, they were all consecutive through the end of the year. We had 1 day in October with 6. We had 3 days in November with 6, and the rest of them were in December to accommodate benefit time around the holiday, which we gladly did. But the point I want to make is we had 6 19 times for the whole year. It wasn't, we had, I think we've seen a lot on social media that says we're constantly at 6. We were at 6 19 times 5% of the time. So this is what firefighters look like on duty based on call load. So we've seen 11 firefighters on duty, if you see right here, you see the call loads here, 10, 9, 8, and 7. I'm sorry, these are duty days, so don't worry about call loads yet. That's wrong up there. These are how many days we had. So if you notice, we had 0 days in 2016, but 19 and 40 days in 2017. But we can talk about a little bit about call load here. So staffing the department, in a manner that can handle the call load is important to us. It's important to Jeff, it's important to me. I know it's important to the firefighters themselves and the commissioners. This pie chart accounts for about 4,766 total calls. You can kind of see based on our records, 3,900 calls, or 83% of our calls, we had 8 or more firefighters on duty at a rate of 13 calls per day. About 5.52% of our calls, we only had 6 firefighters on duty at a rate of 13.15, and 10% of our calls, almost 11%, we have 7 firefighters on duty. So what's that look like on an average daily basis? You can kind of see for the most part, we're getting about 13 calls a day. Although for some reason,